I guess we'll go just get started, and whoever joins in will join in as we continue to move ahead. So, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Think to Ink Advances in Digital Proofing webinar. Our session today is going to feature Dan Caldwell, President of ICS, Vicki Blake, the Vice President of Business Development for ICS, Dan Gillespie, Director of Technical Services for Alder Color Solutions, Certified Color Geek. And my name is Marty Davis, and I'm the President of Alder Color Solutions. All of our attendees are going to be on mute during the session. So if there are any questions, just go ahead and please use the chat window. And what we'll do is we'll have a Q&A session during the wrap up at the end of the presentation. But without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dan Caldwell and Dan Gillespie and Vicki, and we'll get started right away with the presentation.
Thanks, Marty. Little agenda of what we're going to do today. We're going to tell you who we are and who Alder is, why we're working together. And then I thought I'd go through a little history of proofing and how we got to digital color proofing. Talk a little bit about, Vicki's going to talk a little bit about hard copy versus digital and what we have as a solution for today's digital proofing. So ICS Color is a software development company. We've been delivering remote director software for almost 20 years, 19 years. We're headquartered in Southern California, right outside of San Diego. And our background is we have a core competency in color. We've wrapped delivering proofs around our color management technology rather than trying to add color management technology to a proofing system. It makes us unique. We've built our product to go with the little phrase of think to ink, which means from photographers all the way to press side and any piece of that puzzle that needs proofing. We have a support team located throughout the world, Asia, Latin America, EU, and of course here in the States. Alder is located in Portland, their headquarters, and they also have global support. They're a certified expert color IT services and solutions. They have a team of experts who can go out in the field. They can do G7 training. They can set up your printers. They can sort out your profiles, do quality assurance for you. It's a good team of experts that can work remotely and also in the field where you need them to sort out any color issues you have. So basically what we bring to the table is both backgrounds that I just explained in the slides. Working together, Alder and Remote Director can bring a digital color proofing solution to anyone, anywhere. And because Remote Director it depends on color management and good profiles, Alder is a good team to make sure that those are in place and you have a successful digital proofing solution. Before we get into digital color proofing, I thought it would be good to give us a little recap of where proofing has come from and why no proofing system is a perfect proofing system. In the 70s, we did press proofs. In the 80s, we did film-based laminate proofing. In the 90s, we did digital proofing. And then in 2000s, in this millennium, we finally got into inkjet. So in the printing press, the proofing press, it was actually a flatbed press where you could put your plate on, your offset plate, and do a printed proof. It was a slow process. It cost a lot of money. You had to print so many yellow sheets and then magenta sheets, and you made what they called back in the day progressives or progs. That was your proof that you sent to your customer. But even then, when you were printing with offset ink on paper, people would say, well, it's not the production run. So it's just a proof. It's not really what you're going to see because it's a handcrafted proof. Then as we move forward, we got into film-based proofs, and this made proofing affordable. This is actually what made color more popular in the world, and we started seeing more and more color separations. Scanners replaced cameras for making separations, and laminate proofs such as match print, chromalin, etc. came out. They were faster, more economic than a press proof, but nobody wanted them at first. Everybody wanted, all the high-end customers, oh, I want a press proof. I can't live with this laminate proofing system. But over a couple of years' time, it then became the standard that everybody lived with, and press proofs faded away to where many of you don't even remember seeing a press proof. Then when CTP came along in the 90s, computer to plate, and film went away, they had to find a way to replace the laminate proofing system. So they found a way basically to expose those same dyes we used and exposed through film on a laminate proofing system digitally, and created a digitally based laminate, which was the approval systems. Final Proof, I think, was the one from Fuji. There was several on the market. But again, costly supplies, and people still didn't accept them. They wanted match prints because these weren't as accurate, until they realized that you had to pay for a set of film just to get a match print. So they started accepting these, and it became the standard. Then in 2000s, inkjets came along. They came on slowly, but as color management matured, we've actually found out that the inkjets were the most accurate proofing system since the printing press. It was better than the laminate systems if you had proper color management. And they were faster, obviously much lower costs than the very expensive digital laminate systems. But we still had resistance because many people couldn't see their dots anymore, and there was the fear of lost dots. So inkjet proofing manufacturers, RIP manufacturers, went to a great deal of expense to generate dots on an inkjet proof just to satisfy people's fear of not seeing dots, even though the dot generation to inkjet was a different algorithm than the dot generation to the CTP device. It just made the customer feel better because they were seeing dots. But eventually that fear went away, and now inkjets are pretty widely accepted from a couple manufacturers as a quality proofing system. That brings us to where we are today. And like I said, 19 years ago, we introduced the first SWAP certified monitor proofing system. It's cost effective. It's more accurate because we include the paper color, and it's done only with profiles. It's very high quality, and it's fast. A little bit about the terminology we use, because proofing can be called a lot of things. First of all, it's a contract. A proof is a contract, or should be a contract, between the vendor and the supplier. So once you have a signed proof, whether it's digitally signed or physically signed, it's saying that this is what I want, and it's the printer's responsibility to match that proof. Hard copy proofs are, like we said, it's any hard copy, no matter which variety it is. Remote proofing could be either. Many places have remote inkjets in remote locations, and they're printing proofs on those inkjets. That's still remote proofing. But a digital color proof is what we like to call a color managed display-based proof that is accurate. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Vicki, and she's going to give you a little hard copy versus digital proofs scenario, as well as an introduction to our solution.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, so why digital proofs? Why do we say that they're better? Well, we all know that passing PDFs is fast and easy. Everybody does that today. And that's really digital proofing, if you will. But if you need to see accurate color, you've got to go to a hard copy. And the hard copy can give you the accurate color, but they're prone to error. And the equipment, supplies, maintenance, postage, much less expediting, are very expensive. They're also environmentally wasteful. But most important, everything we do today is digital. Basically from think to ink, it's all a digital workflow, except for hard copy proofs. The minute you print out a copy and you send it to your vendor and they mark it up with a Sharpie, and then somebody has to consolidate all of that, you're basically breaking the digital workflow. And when you do that, there's no way to know the color under which the color conditions that the proof was created under, which is why a lot of prepress people will put stamps on there giving you that information. Most important, you're creating multiple copies and you have no version control. I worked for a couple of years with the Hershey Cup Corporation, and every day I saw somebody with a stack of proofs saying, wait a minute, is this the one after we asked them to warm up the Munsell Maroon, or this one? So that's a big issue. The comments and approvals must all be compiled manually, which is prone to error as well, and they must be archived physically, and they fade with age. Plus, enter COVID-19. In today's world, we're working from home. We have restricted travel. We can't take 4 people and huddle around the light booth and decide what the next thing to do is after looking at this proof. And we certainly can't do live press approvals. So how do you approve color today? In summary, today's proof, well, in summary, sorry, basically it's faster, it's more color accurate, it's more traceable, and it's green, which is why we say Epsons are the proofs of yesterday and digital color proofing are the proofs of today. So what is the solution? The solution is digital color proofing, because a proof arrives in minutes, your time is saved, your cost is reduced, and the communication between supplier and vendor is improved. Not only that, you can do in hours what takes days when you've got to land mail a hard copy proof. But most important, back to that break in the digital workflow. With digital color proofing, a single latest version of that proof is served up to multiple people. They can even review it simultaneously, and you can refresh your screen and see a comment that someone just made a couple of minutes ago. The color and viewing conditions are not only right, they're stored within the file, so you can check them and make sure they're right. The comments and sign off of all the versions are automatically compiled for you and automatically archived. The approved file is then immediately available for the printer to download, so errors are greatly reduced. And we always say with a chuckle, digital proofs never fade. In addition, you can do some special things. One of them is to share digital drawdowns. So you can show what an ink's going to look like on a particular substrate visually on the monitor. Also, you can show somebody early on in the design cycle, like, what would it be like if I use this spot color versus that spot color? What would it look like if I printed this package on a different substrate? So that's a lot of stuff that is very time consuming to do when you're doing it manually and mailing things. So Remote Director is our solution. We call this verified color accurate monitor-based digital color proofing. That's kind of a mouthful, but basically what that means is if you're invited to a proof and you are a color critical approver, before you're allowed to view that proof, our software will go out and physically check the calibration status of your monitor, see when the last time you calibrated it and if it passed. If it's not been calibrated within the time frame that the proof creator designated, then we actually put the mask over the screen, disable all the functionality except calibrate, and you must calibrate. So that way we know what the status of the monitor is and that everybody is seeing exactly the same thing. We also do support what we call hybrid proofing. So if this goes through the digital food chain and then it gets to the printer and he doesn't have a monitor on press, what he can do is actually utilize our software to send this to a calibrated Epson, create his own hard copy proof, and we're guaranteeing that the color on that Epson is the same as the color on the screen. So let's talk about the proof server. This is really the heart of the system. It basically serves up the proofs from the cloud. We run our SaaS solution on Amazon Web Services. You can also add SSL certification. So everything is completely secure, which is what a lot of the consumer product goods companies care about today. You can also have your own usable, definable libraries of colors and substrates. It's easy and intuitive, and it's cross-platform. From a workflow standpoint, you can basically create any workflow you want. We use this with roles and permissions. You can also have a user-definable work group, meaning any one of 3 different people can approve something. Everybody's got this dashboard view of project activity, and you can quickly drill down and see what's late, what's in your list of things to do. Also, it keeps a full audit trail of the viewers. Everybody that touched this proof, commented on it or anything, you have a full audit trail. You can also add hot folder automation, which allows you to basically template and automate the proof creation itself rather than filling in all of the specifications. Next slide, Dan. We started in publication, as Dan said, about 20 years ago, but for the last 10 years, we've been focusing on packaging because there are some unique challenges there. So in order to make sure we support packaging fully, we support Pantone colors, we support custom spot colors, we support PDF X4, CXF, ICC, extended color gamut, and we'll even write the CXF data. As mentioned before, you can have your own custom libraries of paper and you can select those and actually reflect that color. We also have a 3D view that will allow you to just show light, reflecting off of metallics and varnishes. As Dan also said, we come from a color management background, and that's why we have a spectral blending engine that is the most accurate color match that is available in the industry today. The monitor calibration and profiling software is our own, so we know that everyone is being calibrated the same way. The top 3 displays, NEC, AZO, and BenQ, we actually took their SDKs and we calibrate those internally. But we will calibrate any monitor through the GPU. And the color rendering is done dynamically on that GPU. Thanks to the gaming industry, there's enough power there, and that significantly reduces your server hardware requirements. We also control the ambient light, and we are cross-platform color accurate. So what are the benefits to all this? Number 1, speed. At the end of the day, being able to proof that quickly means that the consumer product goods companies get their product to market faster, and that's the most important thing. It improves your supplier vendor communications, as mentioned, saves a lot of time, a lot of cost, and even by reducing errors, you're eliminating more cost. And it's higher quality. We know the printer has a perfectly accurate target that will never fade, and it's all environmentally responsible. So now we have a little case study for you. One of the first CPGs that approached us about a year ago was Harry's. And Harry's was incurring a lot of additional cost because instead of huddling around that light booth, now they had people working from home and they were having to send multiple hard copies to people's houses. So initially, next slide, please. Initially, their thought was just to save those additional costs they were incurring. But as they got to know Remote Director, they realized there was a lot of time and money that they could save in their internal workflow, as well as even with their supply chain. So for the next couple of months, they tested hardware, they tested software, they basically explored everything, and then they went ahead and installed in August. Initially, just for their own internal workflow, they gave that like 90 days to make sure it was totally nailed down, and then they started rolling it out to their supply chain. So they agreed in December to do a press release for us. And I won't read this all to you, but there's a link in this presentation where you can click and read the entire press release. But basically, they are thrilled with this. They're saying that things that took, weeks take days, and things that took days take hours. And they've started rolling it out then through, I believe we're just onboarding one of their last printers right now. So they've insisted that their whole supply chain use it. And I believe Peter told us the other day, he hasn't created a hard copy proof in over 6 months now. So we also checked in with some of our longtime clients, kind of flip the other side of the coin here a little bit. These are people that have had in publications that have had Remote Director for 15 years. And again, there's a Q&A that you can click that link and read, but they're still as thrilled with it as they have been for 15 years. They said, thank goodness, they really didn't change anything when COVID hit because they already had the system in place. And as mentioned, again, you can read a full Q&A between DMG and Bauer. So in summary, today's digital color proofing system is the solution for today, for all the myriad of reasons that we discussed. Thank you. And now I think Dan will open it up for questions.
Yeah, well, we don't have any questions at this point, but I thought that I would add, that Vicki mentioned the spectral blending engine, and I think that's one of the particularly most powerful functions in Remote Director, as these CPGs start including spectral definitions in the form of CXF format in their PDFs, they're going to need a way to view those. And most desktop applications utilize the color engine that's built into the operating system, which of course could not interpret those definitions. So having the ability to, interpret the actual spectral curve of the color, which could then also go onto the ink lab and could have ink formulated and other things, quality control related, makes it incredibly powerful and cutting edge.
Hey, Dan, you just had a mouthful of acronyms in there.
Yeah, well,
CPG, CXF, and PDF. Just so everybody's aware, could you just, I think everybody knows what PDF is, but could you maybe just jump in and throw in CPG and CXF and some of these others? So
Yeah, sure.
everybody's clear on it?
Yeah, CPG is consumer products groups. You might also call them brand companies. And CXF is a file format. It's a international standard. It's a color exchange format. And there's different levels of CXF. So you could have just the solid color defined in the CXF. You could have the solid color and the tonality, meaning measured in tints, defined in the CXF. And you could also have the solid color of the tonality and the opacity of the color defined in that CXF file. That CXF format is kind of our worldwide standard for communicating these things digitally, although a lot of RIP softwares and desktop applications, don't support it yet and wouldn't know what to do with that spectral curve, even if they came across a CXF file format.
Yeah, if I could add, CXF today is what ICC was in the 90s. Lots of ICC profiles floating around. Many RIPs didn't use it, and people were emailing their profiles from one person to another. Now it's commonly part of the PDF, and the ICC profile is buried in the PDF. And a couple colleagues of ours a couple years ago came up with the idea of approaching Adobe to put the CXF data for spot colors into the PDF. And that is now there. And there are few softwares that write CXF into the PDF. Remote Director is one of those. And there are a few RIPs that will extract it and proof with the CXF data that is in the PDF. And again, Remote Director is one of those as well. So I think this will become commonplace, just as profiles were used to describe separations. Embedded CXF will be used to describe the color of the spot colors.
And
Great.
Dana,
Thank you, Dan. I was going to ask that question about the difference between ICC and CXF and some of the other file formats. So that's a great explanation.
I think we've got a question from the audience.
Yes, it says no one else seems to be asking, so I will. Is there a cost involved?
There's always a cost involved. From a Remote Director standpoint, this is just software. So the first thing you would need is hardware, of course. So you would need a monitor that can pass calibration. Potentially, you need to control your ambient light. You need a measuring device to calibrate as well. But if you have those things, the software is basically sold based on concurrent users. So if you have 5 concurrent users, you can invite as many people as you want to look at proofs, but only 5 people can be accessing your server at one given time. So, and if you're going to look at, we sell it 2 ways, basically a subscription model, which is where you run on our SaaS server, which is on Amazon Web Services, or you can purchase your own server software. There are a lot of advantages to doing the latter. One is because you're buying the software, you're going to start saving money in year 3. Another is that you can have your own admin, so you can have your own custom libraries of spot colors, your own custom libraries of papers. So we do have all the SAPI papers in there already and some other libraries. You can have your own libraries of user roles and permissions as well. And basically, it really depends on the scope, but your SaaS model can start as little as 3,000 a year, and then you go up there depending on what your needs are.
Great, thanks, Vicki. And I am going to throw in one other thing is we are actually, aside from being able to do demos remotely like this, because obviously we're promoting remote capabilities, we are also in the process of installing a couple of sites for demos specifically, both on the West Coast and here on the East Coast. So people will be able to see and compare hard copy versus the digital version real time.
And actually, Marty, since you brought that up, we can also do installation and training remotely as well.
Right. So really the idea here is that we have the ability to do a lot of things remotely. And obviously it has been pushed more to the forefront with the pandemic of the last year, year and a half. But the world has changed, and I see this as more of a growing process, and more people adopting this. I think going back to Dan Caldwell's comment of, what happened to the dots in a proof? We all have seen that nobody looks at those anymore. I was actually part of a seminar back in the early 90s. How could you get a proof without a dot? Well, how can you get a proof without paper? Now we have that capability. So, if there's no other questions, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was informative. If you want any more questions, if you have any more questions, this session was recorded and we'll be putting it up. We'll be sending a link to everyone for this, and all of our email and information will be in there also. Hopefully you'll join us next week for the second half, which is color proofing in your workflow and at your press. And hopefully we'll meet again online. There's nothing else we could.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.